Hello, in this video I'm going to show you beginning to end how to make the Dragonfly lace shawl. As you can see, I can't really get a whole thing in a picture. It's a V-shaped shawl that has this beautiful lacy design in it. I'll kind of hold it up so you can see it up close. Now the yarn I am using, it comes in an 8-ounce spool. That 8-ounce spool was enough to make the shawl. Let me grab it. It also made a matching hat. And here's the matching hat. And I have enough to probably make another shawl with it. So there's a lot of yarn in this. But here's the hat, which I have another video and PDF for that. Anyway, go over the yarn. Colors brown mustard, buttercream luxe craft. It is a number 4 worsted weight yarn. It's just an acrylic nylon blend. And here is, of course, if you're making a lot, you want to make sure you get the same dye lot. Which, all of that information, if they ask you about dye lot, this is what they're talking about. You want to make sure these numbers match, because it might say brown mustard in the manufactured date. That was May of 2015. So if you're buying a lot of a type of yarn, you want to make sure all these numbers and everything match, because different dye lots can look different. And they may stripe a little different. You know, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways it can happen. It's just, you want to be prepared for that. You need a crochet hook just to weave in your ends. Yarn, your loom tool, and a pair of scissors, of course. Now this project, which I never did weave that in, is made, it starts at the end, and it's made, and it gets wider, and then it gets skinnier. Alright, so let's get started. Now I have my loom. You want to mark the loom you're using. This is the loom I used for that big one. It is the 5/8 gauge, 54 peg, adult large hat loom from premiumknittinglooms.com. Any loom that has around 50 pegs in it will work. The larger the gauge, the more defined the texture will be. This one, you can see it's, if I can hold it to where you can see the texture in it. It's not super defined. It's real light, but this was done on a 3/8 gauge hat loom from Cindy Wood, and it's actually one of their small gauge looms. I think, I'm not sure if it's considered a fine gauge loom or not, because they had the 1/4 inch, 3/8. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that right now. But, so if you have like your nifty knitter looms, they'll work fine for this. I've got a small piece of yarn here just to work with. I'm not making a huge one. I'm just going to make a tiny one just to show you all the techniques you need. Now every 5th peg on your loom needs to be marked. You can mark them with stitch markers. You can mark them with fingernail polish. You can mark them with tape, with rubber bands. Rubber bands work really good. Whatever you want to use to mark them with. Just as long as you know what pegs are what. This pink one I put there because this is my starting peg. Now this starts out, take your yarn, wrap around, and of course, now if you're new to loom knitting and you haven't really done a lot of projects, this yarn that I'm using, as you can see, it wants to stick to itself. Like, I gotta actually untangle this part right here. It does want to stick to itself just because of the texture to it. So you can substitute another yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn that I used. It's a lacy pattern, so you can use like a worsted weight is typically a size 4. If you want, you can use like a size 3 with it. Although I think a size 4 for this loom would be perfect. If you're doing a smaller gauge loom and you want it to be airy, then by all means pick up a size 3 weight yarn. Okay, to cast on, we're doing a figure 8 stitch. See what I did? I'll show you again. So you're going to wrap around one peg and then wrap around the other like a figure 8. Then you're going to repeat that. Take your bottom loops over the top loops. Hold it this way so you guys don't feel like you're upside down. Okay. So we're going to wrap those 2 pegs again. This time we are going to, oops, I had both of them. See, that's right what I was talking about with it wanting to stick to itself. So that was supposed to be on there. And then that goes on there. Bottom over the top. Now, for this one, we will be increasing and decreasing this way. This peg, that first one, will never move. Because to do your figure 8 stitch, just like we did, now to move it down, you will skip one peg. The yarn is coming from between these 2 pegs, so you'll skip one peg and then figure 8 stitch the next. And now you're on this end, so you figure 8 stitch that one again. Figure 8 stitch this one. Okay, you're at the beginning of the row, so you re-figure 8 stitch that one. Then you go down, you'll figure 8 stitch this one. You're just going down and back, each time increasing 1. See, because wrapping it, taking that off, locks that in. So now we're on this row. And you're only moving like 1 peg each time. I do have other videos that show you the figure 8 stitch if this really isn't clear enough. But you just do 1 row at a time. If you just do 1 stitch at a time. So this is what would happen if you wanted to wrap the whole row. You'd wrap those. You're supposed to take the bottoms over the top. If you didn't, it just went and wrapped. This one has 2 on it. You'd end up with all the pegs with 2 loops on them, and then your pattern's not going to turn out at all. So this is the first part, it's just increasing. And we're going to increase until we get to this white one. Which I've got 2 more rows, so I'll just work this. Because this shawl, really, it didn't take, I got the shawl done in a couple days. So it didn't take as long as I had expected with so much texture to it. So I'm actually really, really happy with how it turned out. I'd seen this yarn in the store and just had to have it. And I knew it would be frustrating to work with. The biggest problem is, of course, you want to find a center pull and a spool, but the center pull kept snagging against the yarn because the yarn has all these little loops on it. So it kept snagging against it and causing knots. Now you want to be careful. If you catch this, alright, so we're at that one. A minute. If you're in the middle working on this and it catches in the middle, or if there is a yarn join in it, you have to be careful. My first try on the shawl, I was about a third of the way done with it. I was probably about here. I thought I had broke the yarn. Nope, it was a join just from the factory, and I got the other end and it wasn't the same collar. It was in like the middle of a collar change, and it was extremely noticeable because the fades in this are just so gradual and just so perfect the way they fade. So it didn't go back into the right collar. What it had done was actually red. I was right at the end of my red, and the red was already starting to change. And the piece I hooked to it was like at the beginning of the red. So it went red, a little bit of the orangey color. Actually, it was on the other side. It was like red, a little bit of gray. And then it went right into the middle of the red again. So I had like a little stripe of gray that to me was very, very noticeable. So if that happens, what I found to be the best thing to do was to just pull. There's so much of this yarn, you can pull a good hunk of it out and you'll be fine. Just pull the yarn out and just ball it as you're pulling it out until you get back to the right collar you're in, and then start back up. Okay, we are at our first white peg. So that's our first 5. Well, counting this one, it's 6. To do the decreases and increases, we're going to do them, but you are never going to do the first 2 pegs or the last 2 pegs, because that kind of helps keep the edging on it. Let me look. See, because it goes down pretty close, but this still keeps kind of like an edge on it if it stops before those last 2. If you want more of an edge, don't do the first or last 3. That's up to you. So go ahead and work this figure 8 stitch until you are 2 past this white peg. Okay, so you can see the shape is already turning out. Yes, and while I was working up my swatch, my cat found the shawl and decided it is his now. So hopefully I have subscribers who are cat lovers, and if his purring is being picked up by the camera, hopefully it's not too irritating. Okay. I increased to 2 beyond, and then I went ahead and did my figure 8 stitch back to the first peg. Now this is when we were doing our increases and decreases, which he's stolen my shawl, so I will show you with this. There's sets of right decreases, which it's very self-explanatory. They go to the right. Left decreases, they go to the left. The main thing you need to remember is what way to move the yarn. We are 2 past this. You always start with your white pegs for each set, or whatever pegs you've marked. We will go ahead and do a left decrease. So we're going to take the yarn off that peg, move it to the peg on the left. You always move the yarn in the direction that the decrease is going. So if it's going to the left, move to the left. Now, instead of doing our figure 8 stitch, we're going to E-wrap this next row. But it is a decrease row. I mean, it is an increase row. So what I'm going to do is, if I wrap it like this, then something's going to have to hold my yarn. I've already been doing the figure 8 stitches on the edge, so this will actually keep the edge the same. You skip a peg, that one with the last yarn on it, wrap, do your figure 8 stitch. And there, it's locked in. At this point, you just take your bottom loops over the top. That one had 2 on it. And you go all the way back. So that was our first decrease. Now we want it to keep going in this direction. So now we will take the yarn from the second one. And this one, it's going to be a lot tighter than that first one. So if you find it easier, you can untwist it. I'm trying to show you just using this yarn because this yarn can be a little hard to see. So there's the loop. And I moved it over. Now you push everything down to the bottom. And E-wrap back to the beginning. Further along in the project, I'm wrapping more than one peg at a time. Further along in the project, you'll be doing more than one set at a time, but right now there's no sets that are within 2 of the beginning and end peg. But I will work this down far enough to show you what to do. Now, if it feels too tight, when you're taking the 2 over, just take 1 at a time. Alright, so, see, after each decrease, you're going to E-wrap. So I've already E-wrapped. We're back at our first peg. We just did this one, now we're on this one. If something would happen and you would forget which peg you were on, let's say you set it down. If you lift it up, there was our first one. Here's our second one. So there's the first hole. Here's the second hole because it's right up by the peg. And if you look, you can see that the yarn is just wrapped around that peg. So that is how you know. So you know that one was the last decrease. So this is the peg. This was your first one, then this one. This is the peg you need to move. And if you untwist the stitch before you put it on, it will make that stitch looser so the openings are a little bigger too. Okay, so we E-wrap, of course, after that peg. It's the last one. We're going to skip it and do kind of like a figure 8 stitch. There are a lot of ways you can increase and decrease your rows. I'm just showing you one. This is not like the only way you can do this. Okay, now we are getting down here a few. So which one are we on? We are on this one. So this one will move to this peg, and that will be as far as we can decrease on this side. But untwist it. Put it on if you want to untwist it. Now if you look, we have 2. This is the peg that we decreased on this one. It's 2 from the next marked peg. And it's 2 from the end. So we can actually go ahead and start on this side. Of course, this video is made to go with the full PDF, and the PDF, the link to it will be in the description below with information on the loom and stuff like that as well. So remember, after every decrease row, you do an E-wrap row. But I'm going to finish this whole first set of decreases of the left slant, sorry. The left decrease. There we go. Finish this whole first set with you. Okay, so this one, the last decrease was here. These are the last 2, and we don't touch those, so we can't decrease anymore. But we're not done yet. This was our first decrease down on this side, so this one moves over. That one was the first, so this one will move to here. And the way you know you are done with your decrease row is when your 2 loops are on your marked pegs. All the way around the loom, except for if your first peg or last peg, you know, the pegs that you don't do, unless one of those are the marked peg, those ones won't be. But all the rest of them, the 2 loops will be on that marked peg, and so you know you're done with that set. So you'll still do 1 row of E-wrap, Still doing your increase. You will always do your increase until you get it to the width that you want it, and then you will start doing your decrease. So that first set of left, you can kind of see it showing up. That first set of left decrease is done. We need to do a set of right decrease. But you're going to do 2 rows of your figure 8 stitch, which you're down here. So your first row you'll do, now your second row you will increase 1 just on this side. Then I'll show you how to do the right. Alright, so your 2 rows of figure 8 stitch are done. If you sit it down and you're not sure if you did both rows, if you look, there's a row of holes. That is your figure 8 stitch row. Okay, now we are going to do the right decrease. So you'll go around the entire loom, take the loops off your white pegs, put them on the pegs to the right. This one we can't do because it's within the 2, and the same thing with this one, it's within the last 2. So this is the only one we're doing right now. You're going to E-wrap all the way back to your first peg. Take your bottoms over the tops. Okay, we have another decrease, so we're still going to the right because we want it to slant to the right. Take it off the peg to the right of the white. That one's a little tighter. I'm going to let that unravel. There we go. Move it to the peg after that. Still within the last 2 on each side, so that's the only one we're using at this point. Oops. Okay, and we're increasing 1 because it's this side. Anytime we're going down this side, we are increasing 1 until we get it as wide as we want. But I'm just going to do this one set of, see, that one was a little tighter. This one set of right decreases so you know how to do it, and then I will start decreasing the width instead of increasing it. Okay, so now we are on this third one. Take it off. I'm going to let it untwist, and I'm putting my finger back here at the top of that stitch to hold it so it doesn't go anywhere. Because this yarn, it can be hard to see where you're at. And if you drop a stitch, that's something I'm not even wanting to deal with at all. Okay, so the third from the white peg is empty. So the third from the white peg on this one, it's still within those last 2, but third from this first peg isn't. So we're going to go ahead and start decreasing over here. I hope this makes sense. You just remember the first 2 and the last 2. No matter where the last 2 are, that's going to change. But the first 2 is always going to be the same. First and last 2 of each row are not decreased for the design at all. Okay, so we will E-wrap back. Which, if you think you got the concept, you can kind of fast forward to where I start decreasing this part back up. There'll be a direct link in the description below. But I'm going to kind of work it with you for those who are just better with the visuals. Okay, so you can see this was the one we decreased, so we need to go over 1. And even if you get confused on which type of decrease you're on, when you stretch it out, you'll be able to see. You can see this one's going to the right. So wait, which one were we on? Did that one last, so we're doing, oh, we did that one last, so we're doing this one. Yeah, at the beginning, before it gets too wide, the increases and decreases go pretty fast. And again, we can't decrease anything over here. And there's the last one. My pegs are not glued in, so they move around on me some. But I do that so I get my looms sent to me that way specifically. Typically they're glued in, and the glue they use, they stay really good for the most part. Alright, we've got another decrease, so we did that one. So it'll be this, we did this one last time, so it'll be this one to this one. Untwist it and move it over. Did I get it untwisted right? Yep. And move that over. So this one will be the same. Each one is always going to be the same. You won't have one that's moving to a white peg and another one that's moving to a different peg. Push all those down. Okay, now this is all the wider I'm going to make this, but this is all there is to the increase, the left decrease and the right decrease, and increasing the width of your shawl. Now I'm going to show you how to decrease the width of the shawl while still doing your left decreases and your right decreases. So you want to go ahead and do your 2 rows of figure 8 stitch like normal. Alright, I did my 2 rows of figure 8 stitch. You can see the row of holes up there at the top. But you can also see how the shapes are turning out. Now, we are going to be decreasing every other row. I did increase on one of the rows of the figure 8 stitch. That's fine. I like to decrease my rows when I get up to this end, do a decrease, because my next row down would have been an increase. And that way, technically, it'll be the decrease because it'll be knitting the decrease off. All I'm doing is I'm taking this last loop. You can place it on this peg or this peg. The edge seems to look smoother if I place it on that second peg. I don't knit it off. I don't do anything. I leave both of them there together. Now we are back to, we've done our left decrease, our right decrease. We are back to the left. So we're going to go all the way down the loom. And see, we've got 2. What did I just say? Right decrease. I'm going the wrong way. We're doing a left decrease. I tried to do a right decrease. You always want to do the opposite. At least for this pattern. You can do the whole thing doing just left decreases, or do the whole thing just doing just right decreases. I mean, it's up to you. You can do it however you want. This is how the one I did was done. Alright, so we have the white pegs moved to the peg to the left. Our last peg moved to the second to the last. So it has 2 loops on it. Now we are going to E-wrap the row just like normal. but we are not increasing any. We are just stopping at the last peg now because we just did a decrease, and that's it right there, the 2 pegs. The 2 loops, I mean. Okay. Do another left decrease. Oops. That's why you should have your pegs glued in. Okay. We will E-wrap. We just did our left decreases where we could. And we're going to E-wrap all the way back. Take the bottoms over the top. Alright, that one's a little tight, so I'm just going to do 1 loop at a time. It's easier to do that than to try to fix a broken string. See, that one's tight too. And again, with normal yarn, it'd be easier to tell the 2 apart. Okay. Now we're going to decrease this row. It's every other row, so this is a decrease row. Now, where were we at? Okay, we did this peg, so now we need to do this peg. And since each set, it's the exact same peg, I just count 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And of course, there's not enough down here to mess with. And you E-wrap down to the last peg because we are decreasing. There's the decrease. Okay. Take one of them over, take the second over. And I've seen the decreases done different ways where they would only take the bottom one over the top 2. But I just take them both off. Alright, so we are doing another decrease. We just did an E-wrap row. So we are at the 3rd, so we move over 1 more. And that puts us 2 from the end on this side, so we won't be decreasing that side anymore. And those are within the last 2, so we won't be messing with those either. So we are almost for that whole set. Alright. We are doing another decrease on this end. Basically, when you take your E-wraps over, if the yarn isn't coming from this end, you're going to do a decrease. That's how it goes. Okay, now we are decreasing this one to that one, and that's the only one. You'll do 2 rows of E-wrap. Then you will do a right decrease while you keep decreasing this way. And you just keep repeating the patterns where it's left decrease, 2 rows E-wrap, right decrease, 2 rows E-wrap, until you get it as wide as you want, increasing every other row on this side. Then you keep the pattern the exact same, but then you decrease every other row on this end. Go ahead and get to where you're down to your last 2 pegs. Well, once you get to where you're down to like your last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, last 8 pegs, stop doing any of the left or right decreases and just do the figure 8 stitch until you're down to your last 2 pegs. Then you'll just cut the string, run it through each, and take it off. But I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. So we are almost there. We're down to 3 pegs on the loom. So I'm figure 8 stitching back. And now this is a decrease row. So I'm decreasing the same way I did before. Take the bottom loops over the top loops. Now I'm going to take and just cut the working yarn. I'm just going to take the working yarn. This is called a sewn cast off. Typically you'd run this through a tapestry needle, but I find it just much easier to just do it like this. Just pull the string through each loop on the loom 2 times. That's going to lock them in place, and then you take them off. You'll take your crochet hook to weave your ends in. As you can see, it's going to want to curl up at first. This yarn will relax. Dexter, you are no help at all. But the yarn will relax, and the shape will hold a lot better. The shape will kind of show a lot better, especially when you have a full size one. The weight of it, here, I'll do it like this. When you have a full size one, the weight of it will kind of hold and pull down, so that triangle shape is a little more noticeable. If you use a different type of yarn and it doesn't want to hold the shape and you want it to hold the shape, you can block it. There are different ways you can do it. For something like this, like an acrylic blend, the regular form of blocking, I have heard, isn't very effective. And what I was told to do was to take a towel and cover it and sit my iron on the steam feature and hold it up from it. Don't hold it right down, but hold it up and kind of steam it. That is called killing it. That should help it to hold its shape. If you want like the lines, these to be a little more pronounced, you can stretch them out when you do that, and then you can actually take like a cork board or something, put all this on there and stretch it out so that all of these show a lot better, and just take pins and pin it down and hold its shape. That's another way you can do it as well. Okay, that's it for this video. I do hope that the video was easy enough to follow. Any questions or comments, please leave in the comment section below, or you can email me. My email is in the description below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.